It was one of those days when the overcast sky seemed to reflect my unsettled heart. I received a call from the police on my mobile phone.
Yes, this is Mia. What?
The news was grim. My husband Richard had been in a traffic accident and was rushed to the hospital, unconscious. I was at my part-time job, so I asked for permission to leave early and headed straight to the hospital. The drive there was nerve-wracking. Being rushed to the hospital was no small matter. My hands trembled uncontrollably, and I could feel my heart pounding louder and louder. Upon arrival, a relatively young-looking doctor briefed me. He said Richard's life wasn't in danger, but he had suffered a severe head injury and there might be lasting effects. A few minutes later, my daughter-in-law Lily and grandson Paul arrived. Lily was carrying a traveling bag in one hand and holding Paul's hand with the other. However, once in the hospital room, Paul unusually started to fuss.
Mom, I'm thirsty.
What? But I don't have any drinks with me.
Then buy me something.
As Lily went to buy a drink, Paul slowly pulled an envelope out of his pocket. Grandpa gave me a letter to read. He said to read it in secret.
For me?
I opened it curiously to find a folded piece of stationery. Reading the words written in Richard's handwriting, I couldn't understand its meaning. However, it was clear he was trying to communicate something. Clutching onto a sliver of hope, I instinctively reached for Richard's wallet. I had to check its contents before Lily returned, my hands almost slipping in haste. Carefully yet swiftly, I opened his long wallet. My name is Mia. I'm a part-time working housewife, working about 5 days a week. Having been at the same job for about 7 years, I guess you could say I'm somewhat of a veteran there. The decision to start working part-time came after discussions about my husband's retirement. Richard, a teacher, had the option to retire at 65 or continue working as a part-time lecturer.
If I become part-time, our income will decrease. We need to think about our retirement.
Right. We should try to save a bit more. After that conversation, I started working at a nearby supermarket. By then, our son Christopher had already found a job, leaving just the two of us at home. After graduating, Christopher immediately began working for a company and started living alone in an apartment near the downtown area. I worried about whether he was doing all right, but he was already a responsible adult. I realized there was no need for undue concern. One day, I got a call from Christopher. Hello, Mom? I've got someone I want you to meet. Both Richard and I were surprised by this news. The woman Christopher brought home was very cheerful and left a good impression.
Nice to meet you, I'm Lily.
Her smile was so bright, she could be mistaken for a celebrity, and she blushed as she made eye contact with Christopher. She was introduced to him by a coworker at his company, and they hit it off the day they met.
I just knew she was the one the moment I met her. Come on, how many times are you going to say that?
Watching the happy couple made us feel joyous too. We thought they could overcome anything that came their way. Richard and I celebrated their union. When it came time to decide where they would live after their wedding, Christopher said something unexpected. Actually, I was hoping we could live at home.
Don't you want to rent a place of your own?
Yeah, but Lily thought it would be nice to have support nearby, especially if she got pregnant. Lily had lost her own parents in an accident and had no one else to rely on. Indeed, pregnancy and childbirth can be daunting. Even someone as upbeat as Lily might have her own concerns.
Understood. We'll make the spare room available for you. Thanks, Mom.
With that, it became official that I'd take on the role of mother-in-law in a more meaningful way. I was worried about whether we'd get along, but Richard didn't seem concerned at all. Well, once the baby arrives, Christopher will probably find a new place and move out. He said nonchalantly, sipping his coffee and returning to his novel.
I hope so.
I shrugged in response. A few months into their stay, we learned Lily was pregnant, and we all rejoiced. Despite her morning sickness and emotional ups and downs, I was there for her throughout the pregnancy. The following year, Lily gave birth to a healthy boy. As a grandmother, I was overjoyed and moved by his arrival. They named him Paul.
That's a good name.
Richard smiled every day, watching his grandson, almost too busy to read his novels. For a while, I couldn't settle down either. Lily, still new to parenting, frequently asked for help. She needed help with diapers, feeding, and night cries, especially when Paul got sick. Lily, you're a mom now. You've got to manage on your own without relying on me.
But I'm just unsure if I'm doing it right.
You're doing great. Don't worry. Despite my encouragement, Lily had a hard time believing in herself. In the end, supporting Lily's parenting took longer than expected. As a result, I had to take more time off from my part-time job, eventually reducing my shifts to 3 days a week. A year after Paul was born, Lily seemed confident enough to manage on her own.
Mia, I can do it. I can manage by myself now.
She said this with a smile, which became more frequent. Her smile deeply reassured me. Seasons changed a few times, and 4 years had passed. Before we knew it, both Richard and I had turned 60, and we even took photos to celebrate the occasion, which feels like just yesterday. Richard retired and started working as a part-time lecturer at the same school. Christopher seemed busy, always muttering something as he faced his laptop day after day. Peeking over, I saw complex pie charts and spreadsheets filled with numbers. Don't overdo it, okay? Why not take a break and play with Paul?
Yeah, I will once I finish this.
He replied, somewhat distractedly, before returning his gaze to the screen. I sighed inwardly at this. Meanwhile, I found the right time to go back to working part-time 5 days a week. Going back to work as before, I felt like I could relax a bit more. Christopher and Lily didn't express any desires to move out. Lily didn't resume working and dedicated herself to household chores and childcare. Since Christopher was earning, they didn't seem to worry about living expenses. However, I was surprised when she asked to contribute a little to the living expenses. Please, Mia. I'll continue to take care of the household and childcare as before.
Isn't Christopher's income enough?
We want to save for the kids' education and extracurricular activities in the future. But before I could say more, Richard chimed in.
Why not? Education costs a lot these days for kids.
His perspective, coming from someone in education, held some weight.
It's a wise decision on her part.
See, Richard agrees with me. It seemed she took Richard's approval as a green light. Reluctantly, I agreed to arrange for some living expenses. Paul started preschool, and it's been 2 weeks since his enrollment. The daily struggle of getting him to wear his shoes and stop crying had become routine, but Lily seemed to be having a hard time with him.
Come on, Paul. The bus is going to leave. No, no, no. I want to play with Grandpa. Grandpa has work today. He's not at home. No. Paul, your teachers and toys at preschool are waiting for you.
Lily and I used all kinds of tricks to cheer him up. That's how they would leave every day. But something bothered me. Sometimes Lily didn't come back home after dropping off Paul. The walk to the bus stop was only about 5 minutes, not far at all. Worried she might have gotten into trouble, I tried calling her, but there were times when my calls went unanswered. On such days, she would return home with Paul as if nothing happened, right on time.
Hey, where did you go during the day, Lily?
When I asked, she hesitated slightly before responding.
Oh, just running errands, shopping for household items, clothes, you know. Seems like you were gone for quite some time though. Just taking a little break.
Mom, let her have her breaks. Christopher intervened, perhaps feeling sorry for her. Indeed, a little break is necessary for someone balancing household and childcare duties. Right.
I'm sorry for sounding accusing.
No one thought to distrust her for taking time off during the day. In fact, it was recognized as something she needed. However, my concerns about her weren't limited to just that. One evening, as I was relaxing in the living room, Lily came over to me.
Mia, I have a favor to ask.
What is it? You seem very formal.
I was wondering if we could increase the living expenses a bit more.
I couldn't believe my ears.
Is the current amount not enough?
Well, you know, with Paul going to preschool and me making friends with other moms, I get invited to lunch.
Lily answered, visibly flustered.
Can't you manage those outings with the money you already have?
With prices going up and they disappear just buying Paul's diapers.
Indeed, I had noticed the rising costs lately. I reluctantly agreed to increase the living expenses slightly. But that wasn't the end of the money requests. She kept finding reasons to ask for more.
What are you spending all that money on?
Well, I've been shopping online.
She admitted to using Christopher's laptop for online shopping, buying things impulsively to relieve stress. I suggested finding other ways to deal with stress, which she agreed to at the time. But within a few days, she was asking for money again. This cycle repeated, and I grew tired of it.
Lily, you need to think more carefully about how you're using money.
That's not it.
Then maybe you should consider taking up a part-time job. We can't keep this up.
After I said this, Lily left the room with a sad, resigned look. After that day, the persistent requests for more living expenses stopped. Instead, I noticed something strange about Richard. He stopped reading his books and spent time in his room on the computer, doing something he wouldn't talk about.
It's just school stuff. I'd rather not have it seen.
So, how about we go out somewhere this weekend?
I've got plans this weekend, sorry.
He would then retreat to his room. This behavior was new. He never used to bring work home before. Lately, he also seemed distant from Lily, avoiding her in the house. But then again, I've also caught them whispering in the hallway.
Something's definitely off.
Feeling uneasy, I discreetly hired a detective to investigate Richard. I hoped there was nothing wrong under our roof. After a few anxious days, fortunately, the investigation revealed nothing suspicious. There was nothing suspicious about them. Whatever I was feeling, it seemed unfounded. Was it all in my head? With these thoughts, I continued my routine, going to the part-time job and back home. It was on a cloudy day, mirroring my unsettled heart, that I received a call from the police.
Yes, this is Mia. Yes, Richard is my husband. What?
The officer spoke in a calm yet slightly excited tone. He informed me that Richard had been in a traffic accident, unconscious, and rushed to the hospital. I was so shocked that I could hardly comprehend the rest of the conversation. The background noise suggested it was a serious accident.
Okay, I understand. Yes, I'll be right there. Goodbye.
I rushed to explain the situation to my manager and got permission to leave for the hospital. The drive to the hospital was agonizing. An emergency transport is never a minor matter. I felt a cold sweat on my back, my limbs wouldn't stop shaking. And my heart pounded louder and louder. Upon arrival, a relatively young-looking doctor briefed me. He mentioned a contusion on his left shoulder, but no life-threatening injuries. However, Richard had sustained a severe head injury, and there might be lasting effects. I was told he would need to stay in the hospital for a while, and I handled the admission procedures.
I wonder if it would be faster to have Lily bring things like a change of clothes and a toothbrush.
With that thought, I hurriedly called Lily, asking her to bring the necessary items. After a few rings, Lily answered the phone.
Hello, Lily? Richard has actually...
What? I can't hear you very well.
Lily seemed to be outside. I could hear the noise of people and passing cars in the background. And for some reason, she sounded rushed in her conversation.
Richard's been in a traffic accident and has been hospitalized.
I raised my voice to a level that wouldn't disturb those around me.
What? Hospitalized? That's terrible.
So, I need you to bring a hospital set.
Got it.
I hung up, puzzled by Lily's emotionless response. A few minutes later, Lily and Paul arrived. Lily was carrying a traveling bag in one hand and holding Paul's hand with the other, both in sandals. I had finished all the paperwork, so I went to meet them.
Grandpa's sleeping. Tell him to get well soon.
Get well.
Paul twirled his finger and said so in his lisping voice. I watched, hoping Richard could hear him. Then, unexpectedly, Paul said,
Mom, I'm thirsty.
What?
But I didn't bring any drinks with me. Then buy me something. Wait till we get home.
But, unusually, Paul started fussing about being thirsty. All right. Stay here with Grandma. I'm sorry, I'll go to the vending machine. Lily left as if admitting defeat.
Grandma, look.
Paul turned his pants pockets inside out and took something out.
Grandpa gave me a letter for you to read. He said to read it in secret.
For me?
It was an envelope, unsealed. Curious, I took out the folded stationery inside. Written in Richard's handwriting was, Lily dangerous, evidence in wallet. I tried to calm my racing heart, unsure of its meaning. But it was clear he was trying to communicate something. Could it mean there was evidence in his wallet?
Wallet?
We usually don't look through or show each other our wallets. Yet, there might be a clue here. Holding on to a sliver of hope, I instinctively reached for Richard's wallet. As I thought about checking its contents before Lily returned, my hands almost slipped in haste. Carefully, yet quickly, I opened his long wallet. Inside, there were some cash, receipts, a debit card. And, hidden among them, an SD card.
Could this be what he meant?
I picked up the SD card between my thumb and forefinger, lifting it to eye level. Just then, I heard Lily's footsteps returning. I quickly stashed the SD card in my jacket pocket and put Richard's wallet back. Is this okay?
I don't want it anymore.
What? But...
Never mind that, let's go home.
Christopher will be back soon.
While soothing a disappointed Lily, we left the hospital room. That night, when the whole family was asleep, I turned on Richard's computer. I inserted the SD card to see what was on it. What could it be? Photos, videos, and some Word documents appeared on the screen.
Photos? Videos?
Richard wasn't the type to carry a camera or shoot videos. So, having photos and videos stored like this was unusual. Without hesitation, I clicked on them. To my shock, they were evidence of Lily's affair. I gasped and covered my mouth. Then, I opened the Word documents. I thought they might be Richard's diary, but they were different. They were Richard's own investigation into the affair, written like a diary.
What on earth?
I read through the documents, forgetting about the time. But I knew this needed to be resolved quickly. Later, I called Christopher and told him we needed to talk about Lily.
What's up, Mom? What about Lily?
He sat at the living room table, looking puzzled. I showed him the evidence Richard had given me and explained everything. Christopher was shocked and immediately called Lily. She came, looking sleepy after putting Paul to bed.
Lily, don't you have something to say to Christopher and me?
What?
I laid out the photos and printed copies of Richard's diary on the table. This is the evidence.
You've been having an affair, haven't you?
The photos showed Lily intimately walking and chatting with a man who wasn't Christopher. What is this?
Pretending won't help. These photos were taken by a detective Richard hired.
I spread them out one by one on the table.
And these are photos taken by Richard.
They were from a day when he unusually said he had errands and didn't go out with me. That day, Richard had been following Lily.
I know who the other man is too. Richard figured it out.
No way.
The delivery guy who comes here often. You were doing all that online shopping just to see him. What a surprise. It's not what it looks like, Christopher, listen. It's not like that.
Lily's voice trembled. Under the living room light, her face turned pale, desperately denying the affair. I've been perfect with the housework and childcare. I wouldn't do something like that. But I didn't believe her words. With all the evidence laid out, she was still trying to hide the truth.
Lily, where were you when Richard had the accident? I was out shopping. Is that all? What are you implying? I'm starting to think you might have caused Richard's accident.
She paused for a moment, but then spoke up.
On what basis would you say that? I've read Richard's diary. You were confronted by Richard about the affair, weren't you? What? And at that time, you admitted to it. Not only that, but you also promised to stop if it was kept a secret from the family.
Lily's eyes shifted. I continued to press on.
But your relationship with that man wasn't over. That's why Richard saw you meeting him at the cafe on the day he followed you.
No, that was...
Richard overheard you saying you resented him. You were planning revenge, weren't you? Well. So, Richard felt his life was in danger, leaving behind photos, videos, and a diary.
Christopher nodded in understanding.
Dad saved those on an SD card and hid it in his wallet in case something happened to him. In his wallet? The letter Paul gave me revealed it.
That short letter given in the hospital room. Without it, I might not have discovered these proofs.
Richard knew you were wary of him but counted on you overlooking Paul. That kid! So, he entrusted Paul with the letter, to give it to me if anything happened.
I methodically continued, exposing Lily's actions. And that day, Richard had an accident because of you. No, it's not true.
When I called you, Lily, you were still outside, sounding more rushed and different than usual.
That doesn't mean...
Was it right after you caused Richard's accident?
She looked down with her shoulders shaking, and then whispered. I didn't think it would go that far.
What?
I just wanted to scare him a little. I pushed him from behind while he was waiting at a traffic light.
That's outrageous!
I thought no cars would come by there, like always. Then, by chance, a car came, and Richard.
How could you do that? Dad could have been.
Christopher lunged at Lily.
It's not my fault. Richard is to blame for getting in the way.
Lily raised her voice in defiance, insisting on her innocence. That argument won't hold.
It's clearly your fault. It's not me. I'm not the bad one. A little affair shouldn't matter.
How can you say that with Paul around? I still want to be seen as a woman.
I can't stand this anymore. I'm calling the police.
Christopher took out his mobile phone to call the authorities.
I'll testify that Lily caused Dad's accident. Stop, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
For the first time, Lily voiced an apology, crying out. But it was too late for Christopher and I to forgive her. Christopher reported the entire situation to the police over the phone. The next day, we went to the police station with Lily. The police were surprised by the rapid development of the case. Lily, Christopher, and I were interrogated. I submitted all the evidence Richard had collected, but more decisive proof emerged. It was a surveillance camera from a grocery store near the accident scene. The footage showed Lily pushing Richard, becoming irrefutable evidence. Lily was arrested, and Christopher served her with divorce papers. Lily protested, but Christopher was firm in his decision.
What about Paul?
We'll take care of Paul. And we'll also demand compensation from you and your affair partner in the divorce proceedings. Please, have mercy.
Without looking back at her, Christopher stated this matter and returned home. Christopher was granted custody of Paul. As for the man Lily had an affair with, he stopped making deliveries to our place. I thought maybe his delivery area had changed, but that wasn't the case. According to his successor, the previous delivery man had suddenly quit his job. Perhaps he left because he wanted nothing more to do with Lily. But he did that to himself. A few days after the accident, Richard woke up, and we were informed. On my day off from part-time work, I visited Richard. Despite the visible cuts and bruises, he smiled when he saw me.
My left shoulder still hurts. What about any lasting effects?
They did tests, and it seems there are no lasting effects. But I'll need rehabilitation.
I'm so relieved. It's a miracle.
You're exaggerating.
After being discharged, Richard heard about Lily from me and Christopher and was disheartened.
So it came to that. I'm sorry for keeping it from you guys.
He apologized to us. Since then, Richard became somewhat withdrawn. He praised and doted on Paul, who had kept his promise, but otherwise seemed distracted. He probably felt guilty for driving Lily to desperation. It's unfair, he did nothing wrong. However, his former students reached out to him. They would stop by our house after school to chat with Richard and then leave. It was clear how much they admired him, even without any upcoming exams. This support must have been a great comfort to him. Gradually, Richard regained his energy and returned to teaching. While I continued my part-time job, Christopher and I took Paul to preschool. With a school play coming up, we plan to attend as a whole family. I wish for nothing but health and happiness for our family.